Morning, I'm Steven Sprinkle. This is MorningBit. Let's get to it. Top 3 things I think are important today for Bitcoin. The first of which is a story coming out of China. And basically it's in the consistent vein of propaganda as well as overall crankdown via regulation in China. And what we saw was this past Saturday on January 11th, a 30-minute program guised as a informative business documentary around Bitcoin for the Chinese people. And really, based on the reports I'm seeing, it ended up being a misinformation infomercial to scare people away from investing in Bitcoin. Now, China has basically banned all business transactions with Bitcoin, but it still allows its people to trade in it as if it was a commodity. But what we're seeing here, if you kind of look behind the curtain, is China is really trying to protect its centralized control of currencies, which ultimately protects its control of the financial markets, which protects its control of the overall markets of China domestically as well as internationally. And so it's a really interesting play that they're taking. This potentially might be a precursor to even more stringent regulation around Bitcoin, but really what I think it's ultimately going to do for China is prevent it from having the innovations that would occur around digital currencies and bringing those to other nations, say the US or some other nations that have been more leaned back on Bitcoin and not as aggressive in regulating it. So I'm watching this. I'll link to a translation of that program as well as some articles discussing this event. Second thing that I think is really important for Bitcoin today is a mom out of Australia recently had her son die in a tragic way from a drug overdose, but now she's on a campaign to actually ban Bitcoin in Australia. Now, I think logic and reason will prevail in this instance where they won't ban it. They'll really understand the dynamics here, which is what I'm hoping, because Australia thus far has been pretty laid back on Bitcoin. But really, the larger picture I'm looking at in this story is protecting against sensationalized stories such that it could disrupt the continued innovation in the space. So I really encourage people when they hear about stories like this to really look at them logically and be able to articulate to others why these stories don't necessarily mean Bitcoin itself is bad, but that the actions that occurred are, and those should really be the things that are addressed, not the direct means that provided a fluid way for that to happen. Because essentially when it comes down to it, Bitcoin's a tool, and you can use that in many different ways. So the third thing that I think is really important for Bitcoin today is a service called Twister. It's getting a ton of press right now, but basically it's a P2P microblogging service. Basically a Twitter, but decentralized. And the two core protocols that it uses in the background are BitTorrent as well as Bitcoin itself. But not Bitcoin itself, but the Bitcoin, a modified version of the Bitcoin protocol implemented to allow for message transmission. So it's a really cool service. I encourage you to check it out. I really think decentralization of web services is going to be the future to protect against overbearing surveillance and potential intrusions and restrictions of freedom. So if you're a product or a service, feel free to send me a logo, send me some information. I'd love to talk about you. I hope everybody has a great day. You had a great weekend, and I will see you tomorrow.